it's like something that you thought was horrible 3, 5, 7 years later turns out to be the greatest thing that ever happened. And something that was the best thing in your life 3, 5, 7 years later can turn into the worst thing that has ever happened. The reality is that it's not always true, right?
What is up, Impact Heroes? Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Rick Ornelas. Thank you for spending some time with us today because we know time's a valuable resource and we're going to make it worth your while. I appreciate each and every one of you, not just for listening, but for who you are. I know you're sparking change to make the world a better place every day, and I am humbled and grateful for your efforts. It takes all of us doing our part to spread positive change, and that's what this show is all about. Motivating you with stories of struggle, courage, and hope to empower you to make a difference in your life and the lives of others.
Are you interested in having Rick speak at your event or business? Here is what others have to say.
Did not know his story, and it was so inspirational, and his presence on stage, his authenticity was just incredible.
I absolutely loved his performance. It made me feel some type of way.
If you're looking for a speaker for your next event, hire Rick. I promise you this, you will not be disappointed.
Visit rickornelas.com to book him today.
Welcome back, Impact Heroes. Today we have the pleasure of speaking to our latest iSpark Change social impact hero, and boy, are you in for a treat. Our guest today has dedicated his life's work to the mind and body, and he has helped over 500,000 clients, that's 500,000, rewire their brains with the help of neuroscience. He's an experienced speaker, author, and business consultant who creates successful and fulfilled people from all walks of life. He is sought out by CEOs, celebrities, professional athletes, and entrepreneurs to rewire their thinking with his science-backed approach so they can transform their health, wealth, and relationships. Using his health background coupled with 27 years of study and practice of the mind and body connection, the science of success and fulfillment, and research of human behavior, he's developed his own approach, which now includes 92, that's a lot, techniques and tools to rewire the brain. Wow. And even last year, Dr. Trivedi's team was named as one of the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies. So you know they're having a huge impact. He's dynamic, focused, empathetic, and an expert in the science of human performance. He's just an all-around great human being and someone who truly cares about helping others become the best versions of themselves. Please welcome the man known as Dr. Rewire, who can help you maximize your true potential, Dr. Alok Trivedi. Welcome to the show, Dr. Alok.
Thanks for having me, Rick. I appreciate it. Thanks for such a warm introduction. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I like to honor my guests by, sharing a little bit about their background because, you as a guest, as what I call a social impact hero, that's how I view you. That's why I wanted to have you on the show. And so many people out there, our listeners, may not be familiar with your work. So I want to give them a little taste right in the beginning of all of your accomplishments in your work so they can, so it kind of primes the pump for the show and what they're about, to listen to.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate it kindly.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So you and I met, well, I guess it was, last year sometime when we were going to the same event, the Unfair Advantage live event. But yeah. I was fortunate enough to, to see your work in action there, which was really cool, to see you, I guess, in essence, rewire someone. But, the fact that you help improve the lives of others, that you help make people better, that's at the crux of what you do. That's really why I wanted to have you on the show as a social impact hero, because social impact heroes are people that we consider those that spread positive change. They have a positive impact on humanity. They help to make others better, as I said. So the question I always ask my guests to start out is, do you view yourself as a social impact hero by that definition?
It's a great question. And the answer is no. I really don't. I don't think about it that way. I don't know. I just don't think about it that way. I like when you say those words, it's humbling to me and I appreciate it, but I don't think about that. I do think of making an impact. I do think of making a difference. I do think I have the ability and a skill set that basically can help people heal and live just an amazing life, and at least rewire them so that they don't have to stay stuck. That's probably a better way in so many different facets of their life. But I don't think I'm a social hero or a social champion. I'm just a human being that wants to help people and doing what it is I do. It's just like you, it's like anyone who's listening. Everyone's got their zone of genius, and if they express more of their zone of genius, they make change and ripple into the world. That's kind of how I look at it. I think we're all amazing heroes on our own, as long as we can find our uniqueness and find what our unique voice is, then we can make an impact to anyone. And I think everyone can be a hero.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that the last thing you said, that's going to help me prove that you are a social impact hero. But the last thing you said is that we all have that ability, and so many people don't live out that potential. You know, they as Les Brown used to say, the richest place on earth is the cemetery, because that's where you have all the unlived dreams and you know, the goals that never were realized. And so the fact that you're able to help people be that hero, that shows that you're, you know, you are yourself a hero. And I will tell you this, is that out of all the guests that I've had on their show, I think we've only had maybe one or two that have said, oh yeah, I'm a hero. But everyone else is very humble like yourself. They always say, you know, they say, no, I'm just doing what I love and what I'm passionate about. And that's the beautiful part about it, about what you do.
Yeah, I think if you're out in the world and you're making a difference, and you're just focus on the person in front of you, focus on the client that's in front of you, focus on the community that's in front of you. And how do you make a difference in that community? How do you help them with what your skill set is, right? How do you make a difference in the world? And I do think about that question. And I think about, how do you make a difference in the world, make a difference in people's lives, and how do you make people's lives better, right? Like, we live in a community right now where mental health is such a big conversation, but I think it's misunderstood completely. I think health is misunderstood in our world today, and people are sicker today than ever before. I think people are chasing success and missing fulfillment, and I think I think people are overfed and undernourished. Right? Like, there's so many things that we're doing as a society that's kind of backwards to how the system of the body works. And all I'm trying to do is educate people, and at least wake people up to kind of what is real and how the system works, so that you can actually have a fighting chance to live the life that you want to. Not that you have to, but the fighting chance that you have something inside you that says, hey, look, I want to be better. I want to be more. I want to do more in the world. I want to make a difference. I want to be an inspiration to my kids. Like, the hardest part for me is when I see families and parents and dads and moms who get into their 60s and 70s and say, I wish I could have done this for my kids. I wish I could have done this for my kids. And I think we all live with that, but that regret is the voice that kills us on the inside. And instead, for me, if I can teach people how to actually be the inspiration and not have regret, then they can actually leave a ripple effect for their families and give people the permission to live their life. And when you give people the permission to live their existence, then what happens is automatically you raise consciousness and people's ability to do things at a whole different level, right? If you can go do something that others have, then I'll be so generic here just for a second, but I'll use the Roger Bannister 4-minute mile thing just for a second, right? Like, even though I hate that example because everybody and their mother uses it, but it wasn't about breaking the belief. What it was about the voice of inspiration to say, like, if he can do it, others can do it. Mm-hmm. Just like in your own life. If, like, yesterday, at the time of this recording, is really amazing. Yesterday, I don't know if you're into this or not. Yesterday, the day before, Tuesday, the American team won in the World Cup. They won the game against Iran 1-0. Mm-hmm. And they went on to, now they're in the round of 16. And we're a big soccer family in my home. My son's a huge soccer player. And here's the cool thing about it, right? Like, about being inspiration and making a difference in people's lives. It's like, my son said this to me. He's like, it was amazing to see the American team play and win and move on to the round of 16. And when he said this was the coolest part about it all, he said, it shows me that even in America, we can create champions and it can be done. It's inspiring to me as a future soccer player, what he wants to do, that there's a potential, because I can stand on their shoulders and become a giant from that. That, to me, is the game of inspiration. That, to me, is a game of social change. Give people an opportunity to spark the light and let the ripple of the flame go across the world.
Yeah, and you're singing my song, because that's what we talk about at iSpark Change all the time, is the ripple effect and about empowering others to make that change and to spread their light to others. Because I think a lot of people feel, and I want to get into your story because I think it really applies here, but I think a lot of people feel, as I did, up until just a few years ago, that I'm too small, I'm only one person, how can I make a difference, how can I have an impact? When the reality is, based off of what you're saying, is that we all have that capacity. We all have the ability to make a difference. And it's each individual doing their part that, is going to change the world and make the world better. And so, just a minute ago, you were talking about how, health is misunderstood and mental health is misunderstood, and, where people are and, in their life and everything and change. And so I'd like you to share, your story of how you got to doing the work that you're doing, because I think it's really applicable for people to understand, we're all a product of our life's experiences and our life stories. And what I always say is that our stories are what connect us all, because, that's like history that connects us all to one another in who we are and how we got to where we are. And so, as a hero, I want to know, your origin story of how you started, doing the work of rewiring folks. And because I know you have a great story of, you weren't always on this path, so to speak.
Actually, I was always on this path. To be very honest with you, I was always on this path. I just didn't know it was called this path. I think we all are always on our path. We just don't call it that. I think we are on some mistaken path. But when we look at the grand perspective of it, we always realize that actually everything that we went through is actually what we needed to go through to become the person we are today, to be able to express the mission we're here to do. So I since the age of 7 years old, I knew that I wanted to help people, educate people on who they were and how they wanted to live by themselves and live in themselves and know the power within themselves. I knew that since 7 years old. I had this amazing vision at the age of 7 years old, and I followed this vision my entire life. And for me, it was a journey where at 7, I wanted to teach people to be who they were and how to love themselves. As weird as it sounds for a 7-year-old, that's what I remember. That's what I thought about. And I went on to go on to become a doctor and open a practice and built a super successful practice, one of the world's largest practices in healthcare, and was 25, 26 years old, making $250,000 a month, and just, thought I had everything. I had the world figured out. And lo and behold, I started getting patients. I started working with patients and their ailments. And I started realizing that as I was starting to work with them, I'd ask questions about their health, and, their ailments would go away. And the more I started working on it, I realized that the more questions I was asking about rewiring the way that their people were thinking, that their body ailments were going away. And so that was that. I used it in practice. I started seeing patients from, all over the world at that point. And then people started asking me about business and money. And then it's kind of expanded from that space. It started expanding from that into business consulting and entrepreneurial consulting and CEO consulting and sales consulting and working with athletes and helping them navigate performance. And now I'm a human performance expert. That's the best definition of myself I can give myself, but it wasn't always that way. I had to, I was doing it, but sometimes you forget it for yourself. I went through a brutal divorce. I lost every dime I had. I lived on a lemon for 4 days and couldn't see my kids, and had all the journey of life hit me, because when and I did everything. I did all the personal development stuff. I spoke all the stuff. I did all the things that you're supposed to do, and it didn't work. And the only person I realized that was going to be able to save my life was myself. And I went back frantically and studied after everything I did. And I started piecing it together for myself, because here's the cool thing about advice, right? It's really good when you give it to other people, but when you have to take it for yourself, it's like, oh, it doesn't matter to you. You're not the example of that, but I was the example of that. And I was lost, confused, scared, overweight, drinking too much, smoking too much, and rewired my entire life, and started putting the piece together one step at a time, and then made it a path and committed to the path that I'm going to continue helping people doing that. And whoever is open to it, be able to help them heal their life and rewire their life. And that's one of the important things I think you got to remember as well, for me at least, is sometimes we want to help the world, but you can't help the world unless you help yourself.
Yeah.
It's such an important statement. We want to do so much altruistically for everybody else, but we can't do it unless we actually take care of who we are. And if we don't take care of who we are, we can't really make a difference. And so it's kind of important. It's kind of an important piece to the puzzle. But yeah, it was an amazing journey, and I wouldn't change one moment of it.
Yeah, and I'd like that you corrected what I was saying about, it's all a part of the journey, right? It's all a part of the journey because that all plays into who you are, which is so accurate. So and thank you for sharing your story, because like I said, it gives a lot of context into how you can change your life and how different of a life you can have and how much more rewarding and everything. Would you say that you're, I've read that it's your mission to give people the best tools and techniques for transforming their lives. So would you say that it's because you went through that you want to empower others to do the same, to see, that there is something better, I guess, along that journey?
I think it was a twofold thing for me, to be honest with you, Rick. It was, I grew up in a blue collar home. My parents worked in a factory. They're amazing immigrants from India that came to this country, and they worked their tails off to give their son, their only son, an amazing, whatever they could as an amazing life. And I also saw them struggle. I also saw them challenged. And I also saw them, not get taught how things work. My dad basically grew up, pretty impoverished as a child, right? Where he didn't have a whole lot of money. And that, that's his story. But you know what? That's not just his story. That's a lot of people's stories. And so we kind of come in with these wounds from our parents of how things are supposed to be. And they share that with us. And we've heard this before. But I saw things from a young age. I was like, if my parents knew this at an earlier age, their life would be completely different. Mm-hmm. And the choices that you'd make today would be completely different based on the knowledge base that you had today. And so it just kind of made a ton of sense to me. And so I wanted to initially create all these tools to give people success and money and wealth. And because I thought, okay, if that's important, that's huge. And I do. And I have a component. I actually have a book coming out shortly, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. The manuscript just got back to me, but the book will be coming out. It's called Wired for Wealth. And it's about rewiring the brain around money, and so that you can heal your wounds and traumas around money. And so I saw that, but then I saw, as life progressed, I saw like so many people who were struggling, so many people who just didn't know. And I found people were like lost, and I found people were confused, and they didn't piece it together, that it all kind of came together. Like if you have challenges with your money, it's affecting your health. And if you have challenges with your health, it's affecting your money. And we separate these things in our life. Oh, it's like, oh, here's this piece and here's this piece and here's this piece. But it's not. It's all an integrated system. It's a holistic integrated system, because if you have challenges with money going on over here, Rick, what's going to happen is that you're going to have arguments with your husband or wife around money. You're going to have stress around money. You're going to now create chaos in your business or your economics. Your children are not going to feel inspired because you can't give them what it is you want to. So you're going to have guilt and shame inside of yourself. And then what's going to happen? All that is going to create an impact of stress in your physiology. So your heart rate's going to go up. Your cortisol is going to be expressed. So now your health gets affected. So we go to the doctor and say, oh, I got all these health problems. Okay, great. But no doctor ever says, let's ever go fix your money. Let's go fix the psychology around your money. No, they just say, here's a pill, here's a potion, here's some drug that you take to lower the symptoms, but you still live with the same crap of stress every single day. And I thought, that's so backwards. It's so stupid for us to do that. And I said, what if I could go help people fix their money and fix their health and actually help integrate this whole model where people's lives become better? Number one cause of divorce in this country is money, not intimacy. Yeah. And so to me, it was a matter of teaching people the tools of how to live, right? I've been called so many different names, from a health expert to a lifestyle expert to a performance expert to a coach. I don't know. Really what I do is I help people live the most fulfilled life they possibly want to, and be the greatest version of themselves by being the most authentic version of themselves, not some persona that you have to put on. Truly authentic, not trying to fake yourself to be happy or fake yourself to be sad. Just be who you are and be okay in your own skin. And that's where the real secret lives.
Yeah, and I think that it becomes really challenging for a lot of people because, as we were talking about the stories and our history and our life's experience, they shape us. And as you said, so much of what we learn from our parents is, just embedded into, our DNA, if you will. I mean, of who we are and how we act.
Exactly our DNA.
Yeah, and so share a little, because, our acronym for Social Impact Hero is, you know, hero is that you honor your purpose. I think you've already shared how you're doing that. You know, you honor your purpose and your mission on helping make others better. But as in terms of the E, it engages your audience in your mission and sharing and helping others. And so, you know, in rewiring others and helping the people that you do. Talk a little bit about the different ways in which you help people, because I think that'll be very valuable so people learn more about you and how they can, you know, be rewired, if you will.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. There's programs I do. There's coaching programs I do. There's, you know, we're opening up and we just started training other people to be different types of coaches. We're training people how to be wealth coaches. We're training people how to be health coaches so they can take this technology, because I'm trying to serve the world and I can't do it alone. Like, I can't do it all by myself. Like what you saw me do at a live event in 3 minutes or 4 minutes, whatever it was, you know, with that one lady, and then 8 minutes with the other lady. Like, those are practice skills and things that everyone can learn to do for sure. But I think if we take some of this technology and this work that we've done and help other people do more of that. So we're helping train other people how to do it. We've got programs. I do virtual programs. I do live programs. I do events inside that, people who want to heal for themselves or help themselves just work on themselves. And then others who want to take the work into the world. We kind of work with both capacities inside that. So we have coaching programs. We have video programs. We basically everything you can get. And my commitment now is actually, I've decided for at least the next year or two is to come out with maybe 3 different books. So I'm going to start writing a lot more as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, you know, that'll help more people to learn about your work. And I know you're active on social media, on YouTube and Instagram. I mean, you have great content, and that's important for us because that helps build a community, that helps make more people aware. And, and we'll share some of your content on our social media as well. But and I encourage people to watch some of those videos because they're really cool to watch some of the different videos that you have on social media. But in terms of the actual like rewire process, without getting into the nitty gritty or anything, but if you can share, because I think that's part of people understanding. Because at that term at first you'd be like, oh, rewire, like what, am I going to get a lobotomy? Like, am I going to get electroshock therapy? But share what is involved in the rewiring process, if you will, and, without, like I said, getting into the too detailed or as detailed as you like.
I kind of like explaining it like this, to be really honest. It's like making a souffle, right? You can make a souffle a certain way, but there's so many different steps that need to happen and different things that will show up from it. Like it's not a linear process inside of it, because depending on what the psychological construct and the conflict someone's going through, there's different methodologies inside of it. But let me give you an overall framework, at least, to kind of get an understanding of it, right? When you rewire, what you're doing is you're taking these, what I call root experiences in your life that you've had, that you've developed over the years, and some instance created it. And then what you're doing is you're creating myelination and demyelination, which is making nerves come in, nerves come out through questions, simply through questions. And it's called a cognitive behavioral therapy. A neurocognitive behavioral therapy is technically what it's called inside of it. And some people will call it a form of reframing, kind of. Reframing means I'm just changing the way you look at it. Maybe, but what I'm doing is I'm going to the point where I'm actually rewiring it. So it's not the same thing, right? Because reframing leaves you into just kind of intellectualizing it, not really healing it. The difference in the work that I do is that I'm actually rebalancing both parts of the nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And that's what makes the impact and change. That's what makes the difference. It's not about, oh, you know what? I just see it differently now. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. But when you actually go in with the right questions, with the right procedures of those questions to the person, what you'll do is you'll actually balance the brain out, the psychological process of the brain. And that brain will start to lock in and it heals, which is an acronym that I use. It just says you have hero, I have heal, in that it's helping energy align with love. Because love is the ultimate healer. And when you actually love every experience of your life, you actually get to experience real love. And so that's kind of a framework. If I was to sit and say, take the event, find the cause of the event, demyelinate the old event, myelinate a new event, and remyelinate a new event. If I was to take in a 4-step process.
So it's and I love that you're saying love is the ultimate healer, because it's taking, even the bad situations, quote unquote bad situations of our life, and seeing them for, in their totality, I guess, seeing them for, what effect they've had on us, in the long term, short term, if you will.
Yeah, it is, right? Like we sit and say the things, the worst things that happen in our life are preventing us from being who we are. Okay, great. But those worst things, it's like something that you thought was horrible 3, 5, 7 years later turns out to be the greatest thing that ever happened. And something that was the best thing in your life 3, 5, 7 years later can turn into the worst thing that has ever happened. The reality is that it's not always true, right? What we perceive as true is not true. What we perceive as true is our own judgments of the environment. It's our own judgment of what's happening inside of it. What's really happening is an event. Whatever meaning we give to the event is the meaning we give to the event. And the neurology and the neuropsychology is holding on to that. Neurophysiology holds on to that meaning. That's who we are as creatures, as human emotional creatures. That's what we do. We hold on to those emotions. So how do you jump through that? You got to sit and say, okay, well, first ask yourself the question, is it real? Is this real in any capacity? Chances are everything you're going to say, whether you're happy or sad, it's not. Someone asked me on a podcast yesterday, well, what's your secret to happiness? I said, I don't have one. I said, because the more I chase for happiness, the more sadness I'm going to create, because sadness and happiness are relative to one another, right? I don't chase those. My secret to life is learn to love all of it, both positives and negatives, highs and lows, goods and bads, because they're all part of the whole matrix. They're all part of the whole system, because it wouldn't exist if it wasn't necessary. If you look at it from more of a holistic perspective, so to speak.
Yeah, it's not balanced. It almost think, I don't know if you're a Star Wars fan, but it makes me think of like the you can't have the light without the dark. You can't have the good without the bad type of thing.
Well, I shouldn't say there's really 9 elements, but the major 3 components you have to look at in living a life that's really inspirational is, number 1, you've got to have a disciplined mind. Most people's minds are not disciplined, and your disciplined mind needs a core identity, an understanding of what your core identity is. It needs a self-calibrated mission. That's your mission, not anyone else's. It's yours. And it needs a complete understanding of a holistic vision. It needs those things for a disciplined mind to take place. Then I say you have to have an optimal body. And an optimal body is not just 6-pack abs, but it's not being obese. It's none of these things. It's really everything to do with your structure, exercise, training, working out. Everything that structure needs to be in place. If you're bent over like this, you're not getting oxygen into your system no matter what you do, right? So that structure is going to impact the way you function. And so your structure has to be in place. Second, your hormones have to be in place. Your hormones are the communicators of the whole system. Mm-hmm. So the hormones have to be in place. And what helps control the hormones is a disciplined mind. But this third piece, which is metabolism. You have to have your metabolism in place. If your metabolism is screwed up, then your hormones are going to be screwed up, and so is the structure going to be screwed up. So those have to come in place. And the third piece of the puzzle is you have to have balanced emotions. Your balanced emotions are consistent with things that are unrealistic expectations in your life, the addictions you hold on to your life, and the root experiences you're holding on to your life. Those create a balanced emotional state. Each of these needs to be in a state of harmony so that you can really have what I call the ultimate human operating system, what I call human 2.0 at some level, right? That's ultimately what we want to be as performance creatures, to do more, be more, create social change, impact. If any of these is out of sorts, you can't go and make the social impact you want to in the world, because you're going to have impact in your own body. You've got to have everything dialed in these areas so that you can actually perform at the greatest level.
So let me dig a little deeper in that, because we met at an event where there's people that are high level entrepreneurs. They're people that I would say a lot of them have that balance, right? They have that balance, or they're working, if not fully balanced, they're at least working on all 3 aspects that you mentioned. Okay. So what happens if you have someone that those three things are dialed in, but they're still not having the success that they want to have, or it's still not translating into that high performance or that, the life that they want? What would you say is going on there?
the problem is going to be in the top two. It's going to be in their values and their mission, because they think their values are their own, but they're living someone else's, and they're subordinating their life, and their mission is someone else's, what they think they're supposed to do, rather than the one that they're designed to do. Those two components prevent people from actually being who they are. And what that leads to, because it's like a triangle, right? If you look at it, it's like a triangle like this, but it could be bent out of shape like this, or it could be bent out of this. It's imbalanced. But if you look at it and it's an equilateral triangle, then what's going to happen is, if your values is going to give you clarity, your identity is going to give you clarity, you're not really neurologically clear with your identity. What most people take on as their identity is what other people say is their values. For example, people will say, like, being honest or loyal, and, you know, my friends are my values and my identity. And then when you actually do the work and you actually figure out what their real identity is, the tools that come along with it neurologically, their friends and what they say is their identity is nowhere close to what they're living. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying they're living and what the reality of their living are two different things, right? In personal development, they'll say, well, that's a judgment, or that's because you have a limiting belief. No, that's not true. It's not because you have a limiting belief. It's because you believe this is providing you more value than what you think is your fantasy.
Gotcha.
Right? It's not a limiting belief. Then your mission is super important, because your mission is what's going to drive you and keep you moving forward. It moves your brain from the amygdala to the telencephalon, and to the telencephalon and the prefrontal cortex. So if the mission is someone else's, you're not usually using your brain and the wiring that's designed for you. You're trying to be somebody else. And this is what's the problem, is in the addiction section of the balanced emotions, is that you're too busy being addicted to everyone else's approval versus listening to your own soul.
Oh, that's so important, that last part. But I guess you know what I'm hearing is there's some type of incongruency. There's some type of disconnection, right?
There is, and what we think is that, okay, I've got a disciplined mind, or I'm working on my body. Maybe, but here's what I've realized is that when they're in complete harmony, you don't have questions. You're already doing it, and you're already living. You wouldn't want to change a thing in your life.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. And I know that, you know, that our listeners and viewers are going to want to dive deeper and learn more about that, because I get the feeling that's just like the tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more, you know, so much more deeper that we, you know, don't have time for here today. But let me ask you this, you know, in terms of a hero, right? A hero is going to open their hearts to the world. You talked about vulnerability and being authentic and everything. So for yourself, what was something that you struggled with along your journey? You know, maybe more recently, you know, as you've been Dr. Rewire, if you will, what was something that you struggled with that you had to overcome?
Oh man, there's so many things. You know, I struggled with, you know, going through a brutal divorce and, you know, drinking too much, you know. There was a time in my life where I remember I was going to this bar through my separation, and I'd go to the bar, and here I was, I'm a doctor, I got a shirt and tie on, I go to the bar, and I'm like, look at that guy, like he's a bum. And I'd sit there and he's a bum. He's got this wife beater. He looks like he hasn't showered in 2 weeks, and his hair's all over. He hasn't shaved. Not like your beater, where it's just clean. Like yours is just like nasty and nappy all over the place. And I was like, look at him. He's a bum, right? He's been here Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I realized the only reason I knew that is because I'd been there Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Right? And I was like, oh shit. Like this is now, whoa. And I put the drink away and I said, I gotta walk out of here right now. And it was a huge pivotal moment in my life where I realized that, oh, okay. And I had to work through my own anger, my own pride, work through my own experience with it. I used to be a smoker. I smoked cigarettes for, 10, 12 years, something like that. And then I had to rewire my own brain around cigarettes. I had to rewire my brain around alcohol. I used to be 50 pounds overweight. I had to rewire my own health to get in shape and fitness. And I had to, all of these things. Like there's not a single day that I don't go without rewiring something. Like I didn't get a chance to this morning because I was a little bit, I had an early meeting, but this afternoon at 2:00, I'm going to go spend 2 hours rewiring things that I know that are going on in my life and making sure that I'm consistent in that. And I think it's the most important job that anyone can do is consistently keep their brain and mind in a state of harmony, because that's affecting your physiology. It's affecting your body. So I think the number one thing for all of these things, like I can't sit and tell you one thing. life happens. Here's the cool thing about this work is that life happens. And I say this all the time. And in our community, we say this all the time. How do people live without these tools? I honestly don't know. I honestly don't know. Like, my kids have grown up with this stuff and they see the world in a different way, right? They'll sit there and rewire something. My son will be like, oh, this happened. He'll cry a little bit and this and that. I'm like, are you done? Are you done? He's like, yeah. And he's like, I know, I'll go. And he goes upstairs, 10 minutes, rewires it, comes down, and it's over. It's finished. It's not a big, long drama thing. It's not my daughter, same thing. And like, to me, that's the coolest part is that, you know, of the 500,000 people, and hopefully it's 500 million one day, the two most important people I'll ever be able to rewire are my children and help them learn to live their inspired life. And that's, as a father, that's the number one thing to me.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that, because I think in the stories, it's those vulnerabilities, those authenticities that really connect us, because we're all human. We're all, as I like to say, flawed and awesome. We're all flawsome, and so we all have our intricacies and difficulties, struggles and challenges. So as we come to the end, there's a couple final questions we always ask everyone. And before we do that, I just want you to share, where can people connect with you? Where can they, follow you? Where's the best place?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in learning how your brain is making decisions, how you're thinking, what part of your brain you're using, there's a score that I've created, and it tells you exactly what part of your brain you're using. It's my proprietary process that we've created, and it's called the Rewire Score. So you just go to rewirescore.com and you just fill out, it's about 12, 13 questions, whatever, 14 questions, whatever it is. And it'll give you a summary of understanding. Do you live a life that you have to live, or do you live a life that you love to live, or do you live a life that you need to live? Or it tells you your primary emotions. It tells you your primary state, so that you can actually kind of navigate. And here's what I'll tell you. This is really interesting. Most people, truth be told, most people are quite delusional and rank themselves higher than they really are, because they think their life is better than they are, because it makes us feel good, right? But when you get objective with that, you get to actually look at it. And then if that's of interest and you want to learn more, you can jump on a call with someone on my team, and they can set up a blueprint for you and kind of things you need to work through for yourself, and you can figure out where you want to go to do that. Or if you want to jump on my new book, when it comes out, check that out. Check socials. Check drrewire.com, wherever you want, wherever it can be.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for all the different options. I've done that, the score. So, I highly recommend everyone else go and check that out themselves. I hope I was honest in myself.
Yeah,
I think I was.
Hope so, yeah.
So two final questions we always ask everyone on the podcast. The first one is, we talk about the ripple effect. You mentioned it yourself earlier, that ripple effect, and we've coined a term for iSpark Change of a spark moment. And that spark moment is that one action, that one word, that one message where either someone said to you or impacted you, or you've impacted another life in some way that may have a ripple effect and change that person's life forever, just by one thing you did or one thing you said. And I've heard some different examples on your podcast, but I'd like you to share just a spark moment, something where, you inspired someone, you told someone, you rewired someone, and then you've seen the ripple effect that it's had on their life.
This is kind of a unique story. If I got a second, I'll share a really cool story. Do I have a second to share this?
As long as you need.
So I had a client of mine, and she's a massage therapist, and she does more work, but just let's call her a massage therapist for the moment. And she was taking care of a lady who's 91 years old, and she was kind of helping her, and she's been in my work for several years. So she has some foundational understanding, and quite a bit of understanding. She's quite vast in her knowledge of health and that too. So she would take my work and help this lady, and she'd bring this lady to some of the virtual events, and she'd pick her up, drive her to her house, and they'd watch the virtual events for 3 days together. And she's 91 years old on hospice. And her dying wish is to meet me and take a picture with me. And I said, so I was going to Boise. I was going there anyways. And I was doing a talk there. I was speaking there. And she couldn't come because she'd just fallen and broken her hip. So I said, you know what? I found out about this request she had. So I went to her house. And I surprised her at her house. And she was completely floored. And I spent, an hour with her, speaking to her. And this was probably this is the coolest ripple I can tell you, is, I said, why did you want to meet me? Like, was it my dashing good looks? Was it my charming voice? What was it? And she goes, you helped me heal things when I was 11 years old that I didn't even know I was holding on to. 90 years of my life, I was holding on to things. And she said, because of the work that you've helped and you've created and helped me do, now that I'm ready to pass, I'm able to do it in a state of peace and love. And she goes, for that, I'm forever grateful. And she goes, I wanted to meet the man that would let me rest my soul in peace. And I thought, man, that's heavy. That's super heavy. Super heavy. But then I met with her and I asked her. And then, so when I asked her, I said, what's one word that as your life comes to an end that I can help other people with, and I can take your words and share others and use your words to help others? And these were her words, not mine. She just said, life is short, live. She goes, you don't know how long you have, just live. And so it's a reverse ripple, I'll call it. My work to her helped her heal her, but I'll use her words to help everyone here and say the ripple is live. Life is short. You don't know how long you have, just live.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that story. A beautiful story. And, I know you have a lot of them, and that one definitely is a special one. So I appreciate you sharing that on the show today.
Thank you.
So our goal at iSpark Change is to positively impact 1 billion people by 2026 through our community, through our work, through our future social media platform. We can't do it alone. That's why we need the help of social impact heroes like yourself and leaders that are showing others the way, showing others how to be better versions. Remember, impact heroes, every positive action can be a spark moment that has a ripple effect that spreads far beyond the initial act. So go out there and spark change. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, then please smash that 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify and leave a review. We value your comments and we want to hear from you in the community. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and we'll see you next week on the iSpark Change podcast.